All right.
No more than either. Good morning. My name is Stefan. I am in the West Central region, and I actually work at Territory, Minnesota, metro part, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and then north into all the way to the Canadian border. So today I'm going to be presenting on territory management, going over some of the specifics of that, and getting some ideas out there that maybe will help us all with a combination of urban and rural territory management. So these are the areas that we're going to be focusing on this morning. We're talking about market division, and again, that's kind of the urban versus the rural areas that we travel. Also organization from a document perspective and a personal perspective. Travel, planning travel, some things to consider with that. Working with inside sales under territory management. An area that's very near and dear to me, automation and utilization of technology to increase our efficiency, as well as delegation, some systems that we can put in place, and finally some additional resources just for your consideration afterwards. This is just a breakdown of my territory. I think a lot of you may have a territory even bigger than this, but just to give you kind of an idea of the scope. So I cover about 62,000 square miles. Again, there's urban-rural division. In that 62,000 square miles, 59% of the population is in a 5-county metro area. So one of the things to consider when we talk about territory management, as well as how things are divided, is considering Pareto's law, or Pareto's principle, more commonly known as the 80-20 rule. And I think a lot of us will find this to be true, that about 80% of our results are going to come from about 20% of the area of our territory or of our customers. So that'll come into play. We'll talk a little bit about how to utilize that information and how we can use that to more effectively manage our territories. Using the 4-year buy history is actually something that we'll get into a little later, but just want to mention that that's a good tool that we can use to actually break down some of the divisions of our territory. So one of the things that I do is I break up my territory into different classes of customer, A, B, and C, just to keep it simple. And you can see right there, urban. A is urban and raving fans. So these are people that are within that kind of a metro area. People that know you come in, they recognize your face. There's not a whole lot of difficulty in getting them to work with you, so they're the people that you can just kind of count on from year to year or from every time you go in. And then B is your urban folks that are not raving fans, people that every time you go in, you have to tell them who you are again, what you do again, explain the whole process to them again. Or they are people rural. So that's a lot more travel, but again, they're people that understand, they get it, they want to work with you. And finally, we have C, which is rural, so it's a lot of travel. They don't know you. Either it's a zero business account, or it's someone that just doesn't remember, doesn't quite get how the whole process works. So the first thing for territory management is getting ourselves organized. And this is a perfect example of what your car should not look like and what your home office should not look like. And it's pretty amazing how unorganized some people can be, but I'm sure we don't have that problem in here. So organization starts with self, obviously physical organization, office. I think we all should be having, know where everything is at all times, your car, your briefcase, your supplies. You should have a system to how you organize your stuff so you're not looking for it and you're maximizing your efficiency at every stop. Also, organization of your reports, for your buy history, your territory customer detail reports, your open incident report, and checklists. So checklist is something that you can create on your own, whether it's like a daily scorecard, so you have certain objectives you want to hit every day, things that you're checking off throughout the day. And these other things are reports that we should be familiar with, things that we should be staying on top of. Open incident report, of course, we don't want to let a release lead go too long. We don't want to let something kind of get away from us. So, and then also utilizing appointment book, calendar. I think we all recognize the importance of that in order to keep contacts organized, in order to keep ourselves on track. And you can go either way. Whether you want to do a paper date book, or whether you want to use digital. An example of that is the Droid phones that we'll be getting, and using things such as convergence, so you can kind of have everything on one device. Whether you use like an online calendar, and you can set reminders and that sort of thing for you. So the idea here is, with using the digital side of things, is once you input an appointment or a recurring event, you don't have to think about it anymore, and it helps to focus your mind on other things. Rather than trying to remember what you have to do, you can focus on seeing customers, and your device is basically going to do that remembering for you. Travel, I think we all have in different areas, so we all have different travel and weather considerations, but of course, when you consider the seasons that we have, seasonality of our business, as well as the area that we're covering, it's really important for us to think about, do we really want to, unless we absolutely have to, do we really want to drive 400 miles in the middle of February when there's the potential of getting caught on a snowstorm or something of that? So we can think about organizing our territory in terms of not only how our customers are divided through those A, B, and C categories, but also when's the best time of the year based on how busy we are, based on when teachers leave for a summer break. When do we want to go make those really long trips, just so that we can ensure we're getting there as fast as we can, we're able to get around that area as fast as we can, and we can get back to wherever our home base is as fast as possible. And this primarily applies to those Category B customers, which again is going to be your rural customers, your raving fans. So there's a couple different ways too, just in travel, especially if you're in a metro area. Sometimes we can be kind of zigzagging around, but a little bit of planning takes about 5, maybe 10 minutes, depending on how many stops you have planned. There's a couple of sources here. Driving Route Planner is free. It works really well. You just punch in all the different addresses that you're going to go to, and it picks out the most efficient route for you to stop one after another. So using something like that, I've actually found you can cut 30, 45 minutes of driving off during a day. And some of that depends on the city you're in, traffic, that sort of thing. But so something to keep in mind, just another way to increase our efficiency. And if you figure you can cut 45 minutes to an hour out of driving a day, that's probably another customer that we could see that day. So it's going to obviously add up throughout the week, throughout the year. And yeah, for prospecting, that is a word I made up because I couldn't come up with anything better. That's essentially having a system in place that if next week you're going to be going to a certain area, you have you want to have a system in place that 9 days out from going to, I'll just give you an example, from going to St. Cloud, I know I want to send a certain series of letters or emails or something to that effect out. So I'm essentially setting the stage for my arrival. So I actually have a 9-day onboarding process or for prospecting process where on day 1 they'll get a letter sent from Contact Manager. On day 2 or on day 3 I will send them out an email, essentially introducing myself again, mentioning the letter because either they've gotten it or they'll get it the next day. Then on day 5 they'll get another email letting them know that in the next 2 days I'll be arriving in their area. Some additional things to think about. Maybe also include that most wanted list, so it kind of gives them a visual and something to focus their attention on to see if they have any surplus of those books. And then of course, on the day that I'm out there, day between 7 and 9, figuring in the weekend, they've gotten 4 or 5 points of contact ahead of time. So hopefully they've gotten at least one, because teachers, administration, they're famous for deleting emails, using spam filters, that sort of thing, throwing mail out. So the hope is that we've at least hit 2 points of contact before getting there, so they have some familiarity. We're not walking into that zero business account and them giving us the deer in headlights look. So inside sales. This is a great way to basically have a partner in managing your territory. And they all have their own agenda, we all have our own agenda in terms of how we manage our territories, the areas that we hit, and that sort of thing. But if there's a way for us to kind of gel with them and say, in the next month I'm going to be heading to these areas, and in the next week I'm going to be heading to these areas. Do you mind doing some calling there? So there, again, it's another way to get additional points of contact, get your message across again. And sometimes they have a different relationship than we do, so they have an easier time calling a teacher up, a department head, talking to them, telling them that we'll be there, versus us cold calling and them saying, no, I'm busy, I am in a class, that sort of thing. So that's something that we can definitely do with them. And another thing that I found to be really helpful is if you work with them on the zero business accounts and kind of tag team those, the results are the results are so much greater, and there's a lot more efficiency in that, because they're getting the whole they understand the whole business, Follett Educational Services business, the sales side, the buy side, how the two can work together, credit voucher system, all of that. So I've had some pretty good success working with that, actually, just in the last 2 months. Automation. Okay, this is a way that we can work with, let technology do a lot of the work for us. Again, the idea is, let's take the things that require a lot of downtime, and let's see how much of it we can essentially systematize so that we're freed up to do more face-to-face time with our customers. So we're working, this helps us work on our business, or helps us work in our business more than we're working on it. One of those ways is email campaigns. I put up here one resource, Chimp Mail. Funny name, but great resource. It's completely free, and it's something that you can build a really easy, like a really simple email format, and you can set up how often you want this to reoccur. So you could set up 7 different campaigns, 8 campaigns, a whole year of campaigns of monthly emails that you're going to send out that are specific to the time of year, specific to programs that are going on, certain things you want to target. You know, if you want to target surplus in January when things are slower, if in this time of the year, March, you want to start talking about a pre-sale. This is a way to set up an entire year of campaigns, and then you basically just hit, to automate it, and you don't even have to think about it. Every month these emails are going out. Of course, you're going to have to put the contacts emails in there to begin with, but it's a way to kind of increase your efficiency. They also have templates built in there, so you don't have to do a lot of the work yourself. It's kind of point and click. We already talked about calendar, event management, and this is setting up these recurring events so you're not having to remind yourself about them. So not a whole lot more needs to be said about that. And then with regards to this technology, it's easy to get sucked into it and actually end up more complicated than when you started, and revert back to a paper system. So the whole idea here is use it to make it make your territory management as easy as possible. Because the last thing we need is another thing to manage. So when you're looking at these resources, just keep in mind that you want it the access to it to be simple, and you want to also make sure that if you're using this, it's eliminating duplication of efforts. You're not creating more work for yourself. This kind of ties into that, delegation. Again, 80-20 rule comes into play here, in that if we think about the customers that we get the most results from, they're also going to be the ones that give us the least grief, typically. So one of the things that works really well is any way that you can decrease your time in the manual aspect when you're in the school. So now we're talking about the actual boxing up process and the hauling books and that sort of thing. Sometimes you have to do it yourself, but I've found a lot of times in the way that you present a check to a customer or a credit voucher to a customer can go a long way to getting them to volunteer to do all of that for you. So if you can present the check, tell them that with a smile that you're really happy we could do this for you, present all the benefits, and then make them feel like we've done them a great service because we have. Then you ask them one small favor. Do you think you could have, after school, when there's not students running around, have maintenance crew bring these boxes down to the loading dock? And I've never had anyone say no. So maybe a lot of you are doing that, but that's just one way that we can get them to do that. Or bring all the books down to the loading dock when you're doing a PUR or anything of that nature. So they're usually really helpful. This is the virtual assistant is something that can be done any number of ways. If you have someone at home that's willing to help you out with emailing, or if you want to actually use some sort of an online resource for this, this is something that I do. And what I have found is that if I can offload all of my research, all of the emails, setting up the emails, all of those administrative type duties, it frees up so much more time. And the thing about it is I'm not as good at them as somebody else is. So why not let someone else who is much more efficient in that take care of it for me, and that allows me to do what I'm best at. We can talk a lot more about that outside of this if you'd like, but just keep in mind that there's ways to essentially delegate away the things that while they're very important, they're not the things that are actually, we're not actually buying books at the time that we're doing those things. So the whole idea here is thinking about your hourly value, and this ties into professional and personal life. If you spend 10 hours a week doing administrative things, think about what that's actually costing you in terms of an hour, what you make per year, and you can break that down and figure out those 10 hours, 40 hours a month, what you're actually making per hour. And it's just a mindset that kind of puts you in thinking, how can I increase my hourly wage, essentially, and helps you find those things that you can maybe delegate. So all of these things, talking about technology, about the travel, about the automation, trying to bring them all together into one concise system so it's not overwhelming. I like this quote, just focus on being productive instead of busy, because it's really, really easy for us to get busy doing things and think that we're being productive because we're so busy running to and fro, when in fact we're not actually focused on the things that are driving results. One of the ways we can do that is measuring results, and that's using something called A/B testing. A/B testing is essentially you have version A of whatever, an email, a letter, a way that you approach a school, and you have version B. And you systematically go about seeing what kind of results you get from either one, and then you say, version A works way better, I get 30% more response than version B, so you go with version A, and work with that until maybe you start to see a decline in your results from that. So the goal here is just instead of kind of haphazardly going about things, we want to find out what's going to absolutely drive the best results and then go with that. One example is this is just from the subject line in an email. I have found, and as simple as it is and as kind of silly as it seems, if you put thanks with an exclamation point, I've found about 70% higher opening and response rate to that email versus any other kind of subject line that I've found. So because everyone always wants to know, what am I being thanked for, and they think there's something in it for them maybe. Whatever the reason is, I've found that works extremely well. So when we try and combine all of these things into one system, some of the things that you can expect to see is, one, you're going to get consistent results. You're going to be able to predict what kind of results you get. So I get a 70% response rate. So if I send out 100 emails, I'm going to get 70% of those, the people are going to open them, and from that I know that 30% of the people are going to respond, and I'm going to get 20 appointments. So for every 100 emails you send out, you have 20 appointments. That helps you figure out how many emails do I need to send out every day or every week in order to fill my calendar up. And it also gives you flexibility, because if you have all of these systems in place and you have some of this automation going on, it allows you, it frees up time to allow you to be flexible with your schedule and be flexible with appointments and that sort of thing. There's some different prospecting and marketing systems that I actually have some handouts on. But also a contact management system. You just whatever you decide to use, just make sure you're using something. Whether it's a Rolodex, whether it's using something online like HiRise is a free version. of a contact management system, using Follett's contact management system. The goal is just to make sure that you're using something and you're keeping track of what your relationships are and being able to build on those. And we've talked a lot about, site visit system, essentially having a system in place for everything, so you have a process for everything you do. Then thereby you're building consistency, predictability, and you're increasing your efficiency. Because once you do something repetitively, you're going to become more efficient with it every time. This is that onboarding process I was talking about, so I won't go into too much detail about it, but this gives you some bullet points of what's happening on each of these 9 days. So you can see day 1, I enter information in Contact Manager. Information's entered into HiRise, which is that online contact management system with their email. Then a letter's sent, and an email, their email's entered into that newsletter system. Day 4, so I was off a little bit earlier in my timeline, but day 4, contacts are emailed, requesting an appointment. Day 6, follow-up email. Day 8 is when the site visit happens. Day 9, a follow-up letter sent, appropriate. I just put it in day 9, but really you want to do it right after the appointment. And this is, through your letters and your Pocket PC. And then in day 10, activate them for the monthly newsletter. So you can see in 9 days they're getting 6 points of contact, and then monthly after that at least. So what I did is just broke this down so you can see how manageable this is and what the end results are at the end of the year. If you're doing 15 contacts a day, which, if you're doing all of this on day 1, realistically it will probably take you an hour to an hour and 15 minutes, or you can delegate that. And you do it 4 days a week, which allows for a catch-up day or allows you to kind of take a breather midweek or at the end of the week. And you do that 25 weeks, which is really only half the calendar year. You'll enter 1,500 contacts. And with this onboarding process, that means you'll have 16,500 points of contact throughout the year from 1,500 contacts. So I think for a lot of us that represents a good portion, or at least half of the number of schools in our territory. So it's a lot of repetition with the messages being sent to these schools. So the goal is that it's going to increase their awareness of what we do. And then I think this is the last portion of the system is site visit system. I talked about creation of that ABC list, and then what you can do through Excel is further break out that list by enrollment, and we'll go over this on the next presentation on reports, but we'll go over how to filter and sort by enrollment, by the dollar value, fiscal year dollar values, as well as by zip code, and this further helps you to manage those lists. Otherwise they can get a little bit overwhelming. And then once we have all this information and we have our systems in place, we can create an approach based on that list and seasonality, and then work that backwards. So you start from an annual, whatever your numbers are, number of contacts you want to make, break it down quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily, and again it comes down to touch 10 and 15 contacts a day. Completely manageable, but you can see how that can build throughout the year. And by having a system in place and knowing what your territory management is, that makes it very doable. So it sounds like maybe it's a lot, but it really only takes maybe an afternoon to really set this up if you get down to it. And here's just a quote by Tim Ferriss. He's an author that I can really appreciate. He's all about efficiency, automation, delegation. He's saying if it's important to you and you want to do it eventually, which is how a lot of us think, I'll get to it eventually, I'm going to do that someday, just start the process, and correct course along the way. Even if you take one thing away, it should have a positive effect. So that is a lot. I can email that to you guys. These are two different. These are free resources, but just additional information, some other things to drive some ideas home. But if you just go to smashingmagazine.com and do a search for A/B testing, you'll get an article on how that works and the idea behind it and the effectiveness of it, and just a couple other things. So there you have it.